You told him.
Praise.
Dr. Andre Perry is an associate dean and professor. Well, he's associate professor of higher education at the University of New Orleans here, and associate dean of the College of Education and Human Development. And he's also the CEO of the UNO Charter Schools.
Capital One UNO Charter Network.
CEO of the Capital One UNO Charter Network.
There you go.
That's a lot of names on it.
A lot of names.
As the chief executive, he's responsible for leading a pre-kindergarten through high school educational network and fulfilling its mission of providing access and placement in community colleges and the University of New Orleans. He also serves as an advocate for quality public education, leading UNO's mission to rebuild its surrounding neighborhoods. He's charged with advancing the working partnership between UNO's faculty and the charter school teachers, as well as developing community partnerships with businesses, nonprofit organizations, universities, schools, and neighborhood organizations. He also coordinates the Student Leadership Institute for the Pennsylvania Department of Education's Migrant Education Program. The College Exposure Summer Camp, which is held on the campus of Penn State University, encourages academic achievement, civic engagement, and post-secondary retention among the children of migrant workers. So let's welcome our prestigious guest today, Dr. Andre Perry.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Let's get down to the controversy first. You
Yep.
work in the department, the College of Education. You're a spokesperson for education in the city, in the nation, now in the world. But here we face so many challenges. And you understand how important education is. Each of our guests here today are students who are all buying in to the vision of what an education can afford them. So what news or advice do you have for them facing such, tragic times with all the budget cuts we feel here at the University of New Orleans?
Well, remember, I always tell students, learning can't be compartmentalized in a school or a classroom. Learning is going to take place wherever you go. As long as you're breathing, you have an opportunity to learn. And so the trick then becomes to use your educational experience in its context to not only study the content of what you're learning in class, but also study what's going on around you. And so when there's political pressure, when there's economic pressure of impacting the university, that's an opportunity to learn, because you're going to grow beyond this place. And if we're going to have you, and we certainly do want you, we want you to receive a quality education while you're here, but your education is going to go beyond UNO. And it's important that you really study what is going on, how the state, the national levers are impacting this university and impacting yourself. So first and foremost, know that your learning is paramount. You've got to study about where you are. The most important, I'm glad to hear we have a humanities and liberal arts majors here, because most of you can appreciate the question, who am I? Probably the most important question anyone can ask, and because it forces you to figure out why you're here. As soon as you figure out who am I, then you can appreciate, well, why am I here, and what does that all mean? And too many students are in undergraduate programs, graduate programs, just saying, I want to get a job, and are in meaningless existences, so to speak. And so I really encourage students all the time to ask that basic question, who am I? Why am I here? What am I doing? And if you ask those questions regularly, you certainly will understand that you're in a state of becoming something, and you have some purpose. And I think when you discover that purpose, then you can help the university, you can help yourself, you can help kids in schools, you can find your way. And again, understand where you are, understand that your learning is going to occur whether it's in this space or not, but to make sure that you ask those critical questions that will guide you in your lifelong endeavors.
How do you tie it all together? Who do you ask the questions to? When do you ask the questions? How do you know who you are? And when does the feeling of I need to get a job at least balance out with I'm finding out who I am? I mean, if you're going through every day, getting a job seems a little bit more important than saying, you know what, I'm unemployed, but I'm really clear on who I am.
But remember now, there are a lot of, when you're looking at underserved populations, and let's just say women and blacks who were not afforded certain rights and privileges throughout history, it was their critical analysis of their existence that ultimately led to them gaining opportunities. So never discount that being critical, a critical thinker, is imperative to lifelong success and to survival. People think that, because I'm living a life of the mind, there's no payout. Oh, money will come. When you are critical of yourself and of others and the world around, money will come. You will learn how to navigate those waters. But people who truly are just buoys in the sea, just floating around, reacting to whatever, they live pretty petty lives unless they have a rich grandfather somewhere. But so I always say, it's important to think. It's important to develop this learning for learning's sake. It's not this a saying, and particularly for a lot of folks in New Orleans. Trust me, after the storm, when we heard, well, why are you there? Why are you going back? Why stay there? If you couldn't think critically about those questions and respond critically because of deep analysis and because of deep thought, then you would probably just respond, hey, I'm going to go out and I'm going to move to California where it's safe. Or I'm going to move to wherever where it's safe. And not be able to respond. There's always a storm brewing somewhere in our lives, either psychologically, emotionally, physically, in terms of atmospheric conditions. There's always a storm. So how you deal with it and how you respond and how you help others will always be the central questions that you must ask yourself and be able to respond to. And so again, money will come, but there's a lot of people, and I'm biased, I'm very biased, that I've never been driven by money. I've been driven by, I got to meet my family's needs. And sometimes that's a high, there's a premium on that. But I will not compromise the idea that I'm going to be a responsible thinker in the world. That will never be compromised.
I'm going to ask you a 50-foot question
Yep.
and a 100,000-foot question. All right, so let's say you're hearing this for the first time, or maybe you're compelled to figure out who you are. What would you say the basic process of somebody who may be a film major to an English major or urban planning studies major? How do you go about starting the process of saying, okay, I know who I am. I know what I want.
Right. For me, it's always been about reading books that are about either coming of age or that are about the group you belong to. And so reading is important. The other major thing is hanging around different people, because it's not until you have a referent for things like poverty or for wealth do you understand where you are situated. It's funny. I didn't know about poverty until I went to college. I was the happiest clam in the world. You couldn't tell me, I wasn't, you couldn't tell me I was poor. You just couldn't. But when I went to college and my roommate literally bought while the first day he said, oh, we're going to go down to the car dealership and get you a 300 ZX, like right on the spot. Where my grandfather, when he dropped me off, he literally said, here's $50, go make your way. I had no idea I was poor. I was like, oh, snap. You gave him a car. You gave me $50. So you got to read. You got to talk to other people. And you got to do good work. Good meaning service activities. Those are the three pillars of really starting to ask questions of yourself. So if you read good work, you essentially hang around good, different people, and you're doing good things, you ask good questions. And so if you do those on the regular basis, eventually you're going to say, well, who am I? What am I about? What am I really doing? But you got to do those things. You got to read. You got to hang around different good people. And you got to do good things. Got to do good work. And then those questions will come.
My 100,000-foot question is education. Completely different college at the university. Why is it important to everyone in this room, and not in the ancillary or the typical fashion that we hear economic development? All of our government officials talk about that. Everybody talks about education in the same breath that they talk about that. I actually have grown to hate those two words now because they become so cliche.
Absolutely.
So give it to us is in as simple of a form as you can. To why should a student or a professor or an employee or an owner in another department be so concerned about the work that you're doing with the schools and the university and the kind of the global world?
So I gotta always show my bias. I do believe that there are higher things in life. I do believe that there is this idea of purpose and standard. That there is, for lack of a better term, a better way to live, a better way to act, a better way to help someone. And I do think the more you believe that you can at least make attempts to improve yourself and improve others' conditions, you will see the need for education. You have to. Because you don't want to repeat the same mistakes. You want to build upon good ideas. And you ultimately need to experiment, if you will, to see a vision for something different. A lot of people really, they don't leave outside their couple of blocks, their city. They don't travel. That's another thing. You got to travel. You got to travel. If you are in New Orleans thinking that you are in the greatest metropolitan city in the world, that's not true. It's always about diversifying the relationships that you have, not only locally, but around the world. Because you'll see, ultimately, our connectedness, our human connectedness with folks in Brazil, Cuba, Russia, Paris. I mean, I can tell you a connection with all those folks, with people in New Orleans. But if you don't travel, you will never truly feel the connections, right? And so, again, I believe in something. There is a higher level of music. There is a higher level of literature. Don't let anybody fool you that everything is everything.
I don't know. We listened to the Billboard 100 top 100 last week. I don't know if we
see. I have a deep, profound, a profound appreciation for Lil Wayne. Right? Love him. I love him. But come on. Let's stay within genres, right? And I'm not just saying this, I don't want to come off as a hip hop snob because I may be, but what Public Enemy was doing was something greater, because ultimately it was trying to help someone. Music is supposed to help someone. If you're constantly delving on, where I came from, without saying where I'm going, without some kind of positive, constructivist approach, then what are you doing? It's so easy for me to go, this is who I am in 1995. This is who I was in 1995, and constantly do it. That's the dilemma for a lot of our musicians, a lot of our entertainers. They are stuck. They're 40 years old talking about what they did when they were 21. It's like, man, grow. And that's the thing about music. It's so profound because it's truly a language where it fills the gap where language is limited in our human existence. Sometimes, like Cornel West always says, you got to make noise. You have to make organized noise to feel emotion, to convey ideas. But if you hear the same noise over time, well, how is that adding to the lexicon of language, if you will, in the world? So, for me, I've always said, again, going back, you got to make money, certainly, but you also have to advance a craft, you have to advance a language, you have to advance society, or die trying. That's how I see it. You will not see me talking the same stuff in this chair if I'm invited back. If I say the same thing, you're going to be, Dre, what have you learned over the last 6 months, year, 5 years? What have you learned? What wrinkles can you add? What you doing? Not talking to people, not reading, not traveling? I want you to be critical. I want you to kick me on the curb if I'm saying the same exact thing. If 5 years from now, if I'm saying the same exact thing, the same story, weak. That is just weak. So I just am a firm believer of advancing, learning, trying something different, or die trying.
For our course requirement, we require that everyone blog at the end of the discussion. And, the internet is definitely come of age, but a lot of this content development is very much new. We have more content now than ever, and people are reassessing on a daily basis how it's used. But this blogging is kind of based upon an idea that criticism is important. And you're talking about being critical, not in a way of really grading something from terrible to great, but really weighing in on the value of something. What's your thought kind of the internet blogging, this kind of a course where the students sit and discuss architecture to politics to what's going on in music? Last week, the Billboard 100 to education this week.
As long as people blog across different lines, where I have a problem again is when you're not talking to different people and not allowing people to see, get involved, engaged in your work, and you don't change the story. Again, communication, it should fall in the same realm of education, that you're not just regurgitating your same ideas over and over again and not listening to people. You should be blogging, bouncing it off other people's blogs, sharpening your sword, seeding arguments. Sometimes you say, this is the way it is, I know it is. And then you see another person blog, oh, Jennifer, you're right. Let me revise my strategy there. That's when you're thinking, again, technology changes. We had, wasn't that long ago when we developed the printing press. Certainly, I don't want to tell my age too much, but when I was in college in 1989 at Allegheny College, a great liberal arts institution, email was just being developed, right? And but we still communicated, we still bounced off ideas. I wrote articles on our college newspaper. People wrote letters to the editor. You can call it letters to the editor, you can call it a blog. There always will be ways to communicate. And so, but the good thing is you got to be open to new ideas, new people. You got to hear people, because the skill I always tell, particularly liberal arts folks, you got to hear, you got to listen. That's a skill that a lot of people never develop. They're in their own little heads. And I think I got a great brain, but if I just listen to myself all day, I'm going to go nuts. With the same ideas? No. So I love blogs. Sometimes I'm on the good side of blogs. Sometimes I'm not. Sometimes, But I do take the time, if it's not voluminous to the point where it's consuming my time, I do listen to them. I hear them. I read them. I see what's going on. I see the writing style that is developing. I see, again, I do think there's a standard. There are better bloggers than others. I would pay attention of who has a great ability to communicate ideas, to put things in some kind of succinct, concise message that people can hear and consume and read in a timely fashion. And so, you know, if you're going to blog, be the best blogger you can be. If you're going to write letters to the editor, be the best writer of letters you can be. But the goal ultimately is to communicate, to expand ideas, to challenge ideas, and to adjust yours when necessary.
Tell us about the UNO, Capital One UNO Charter Network. How many schools is it? How many students are there? And why did you guys decide to take this on from the University of New Orleans standpoint?
Let me start with the last question. You know, we're in a college of education, right? If we can't find ways to educate children who are in great need in a college of education, then what the heck are we doing? You know, at some point, a university has a responsibility, particularly a research university. You ultimately do have to teach, but an urban university has to respond to the needs of the community. So we do research, we create service projects based on those needs that are identified in the research, and we go out and we find solutions. And that's what we're doing. That's why we have 3 K-8s, 1 high school, to figure out what's working, what's not working, to do it in the right way, whatever that means, not just to chase a test score, not just to chase dollars. And we might get hit negatively. I mean, all the time I hear, well, why aren't you doing this? This is the soup of the day. Taste it. You'll get higher test scores. But it's not a good thing. It's not good practice. You know, so there's a lot of pressure, right? There's a lot of pressure in doing the right thing. But that's why I'm at a university, because, and I'll be very pragmatic, I refuse to expel students, right? I don't like to expel students. I like the idea that you take what you got and you make it work. You give people the best that you can give. And I believe that we're doing that in our schools. And certainly there's problems along the way, but man, I got great people who are ultimately responsible to elevate children's lives. And you know, and sometimes I lose contact with the responsibility, because you know, my role primarily is to deal with the politics, work with the faculty, deal with the policy side of it. We have practitioners, principals, teachers who are really doing on the ground work. But man, every time I drive down Claiborne or Broad or Gentilly and I see kids hanging out, I mean, man, what school do they go to? Who are they? You know, why are they there? Again, those central questions. Do they know why they're there? Do they know who they are or who they're becoming? And it's a weighty responsibility. And so I get stressed out at times, but I would never trade my life in for another person, ever. I love the situation I'm in. I love the pressure. I love the responsibility. I love the politics. It's a nitpicky world. The outside world, they come after you. The inside world, there's internal politics. Mm-hmm. But you gotta stay steadfast. You gotta believe in who you are, what you're trying to do, what's your purpose, and keep moving forward. And, you know, my day will come where, again, I'll figure out that I need to do something different and move forward. But while I'm in this space, oh, man, I'm going to give the best that I can give.
What's the number one thing you hear from people? Education is like music. Everybody's got some comments on it, what they think. Not, you know, from teaching this course now for a couple of years now, I even hear it's a, you know, reoccurring theme of what people think, how people should be educated.
Right.
So, you know, being in your field, what's some of the things that you hear that now that you have a listening audience, maybe you want to adjust or?
Well, maybe, because it's fresh on my mind, because I hear it all the time, is this idea, it's all about the parents, right?
Meaning that people say if you get the parents more involved?
If the parents are involved, then all problems of the world will be solved.
Okay.
Right? Parents are just one component, a major component, right? But let me just tell you, you can't look at school or education as confined in a school, right? It involves, the entire city is your school, right? If you're telling me that having libraries, museums, good music, good public radio, good newspapers, good people around you will not impact how that kid is reared and the educational outcomes, then you're sadly mistaken. A great predictor of academic success is still income. You know, if you have a good job, it's more likely, not a guarantee. If your parents have a good job, you have a better shot at getting into college. And I know I grew up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I received a lot of pain recently because the Saints played the Steelers, and so I'm reminded of that. But in Pittsburgh, I grew up in the 70s where the steel mill crisis occurred. My town is a borough. It's seeded from the city. It was an independent borough. At one point, you could brag about living in Wilkinsburg. As soon as the steel mills left, it became one of the worst areas in all of Pennsylvania. Right, the worst. Education fell. Unemployment rose. Crime just skyrocketed. All because some folks said, oh, we can get steel produced a lot faster, a lot cheaper over in Europe, over in other places. And it decimated the town. So I know all too well that it's the entire social-political landscape, including parents, including quality teachers, including good music, including libraries. All that matters. It all matters. Now, you can only work what's in your control. And that's why I think a lot of the reforms you hear, it's all about teachers, because that's the only thing we can control in a building, right? We can control the curriculum, but it's more importantly who implements the curriculum. And so if test scores are not up to snuff, what do? You fire teachers, right? And there's a problem, there's an inherent problem with that, because the reality is if I could fire some folks in the business community, I would. If I could fire some of these pastors in some of these churches, I would. If I could fire our economic development plan people, I would. You know, but I can't. And so we beat up on a few people, right? And it just becomes a trite excuse for not participating in the improvement of someone else's life. And in this city where 30-some odd percent of your children are going to parochial and private schools, it becomes very easy to disengage. Well, that's them. You know, I don't have to deal with that. So for me, I would never say parents are everything. It's just it's just one factor, one out of hundreds of factors. But they're an important piece. You know, you don't know how many times you got to talk to a parent and say, look, You know, I haven't seen you in years in this school. What's going on? You know, because there's people, just like I believe there's a high standard in everything. There are some good parents and there are some bad parents. And there are some parents that seriously in our schools, in all schools, upper socioeconomic and lower socioeconomic, that are neglecting their children. Neglecting, you know. And certainly we all, as a parent, you go through your phases. There's sometimes you're highly involved, and sometimes you're not. You let work, you let your whatever get in the way. But at some point, you got to realize this is my responsibility.
We've done our word association before.
Yep.
You're pretty good at it from what I remember. So I'll take you through this kind of a Probst questionnaire, and I throw out a sentence to you, question, and you give me the first thing that comes to your mind.
Yeah.
All right? What's your favorite word?
Cross-pollination. I love cross-pollination. If I use cross-pollination at least 3 times a day, woo! Because let me tell you why. Because life is somewhat about cross-pollination. It's about touching different people, touching different fields, people that humanities can understand the interdisciplinary way we live. We don't live biology class. We live with biology as a component of law, of medicine, of literature. It's just one thing. And so you got to cross-pollinate. You know, nobody just lives in a subject. You live cross-pollinating your life.
What is your least favorite word?
Oh, man. Anything that Paris Hilton says. You know, and again, I hate disparaging people. You know, I shouldn't do that. But some people just need to keep their mouth shut and go back to school and ask themselves, who am I and why am I here? Because some folks, it's like, man, I don't want to hear. So just put record on some of these celebutants, and 90% of the things they say, I'm just like, man, I'm tuning out. So that's my answer.
What turns you on creatively, spiritually, or emotionally?
Oh, man. I love to write. I love writing. There's nothing that gives me greater joy in finding the right words to say. And every once in a while, I can take that skill from a paper and actually apply it with my wife, with my students, with my kids, and say the right words. But writing helps me figure out good thinking. Writing is the exercise for thinking. You know, if you're not writing, you know, what exactly are you thinking? You know, you gotta refine, because anybody can put some thoughts in their head, right? It's another thing to write it down, to see the analytic of it, to understand the logic of it. You know, so.
What turns you off?
Oh, man, being trapped, being told what to do. Nothing. See, this goes back to my wife telling me what to do. Oh, man, being controlled. You know, and I truly understand when people say, what movie did I see? Tupac. I saw the Tupac documentary recently. And they were saying, oh, I know you got all this work coming out of jail, right? He said, you had all this time. And he said, you can't create in jail. It's hard to create in jail, right? And I mean, that was so profound, because there's nothing that cuts off creativity than control. You know, control, you got to write this way, you got to think this way, you got to go to this, you know, you got to come in at 10 o'clock. No, joking. No, but control, man, it cuts off creativity. There's no control. There's discipline. You know, there's discipline. Certainly don't confuse control with discipline. A lot of people want to lock you down, but there's certainly a discipline. There's something, a repetitive, an adherence to some system of getting to a place. And then sometimes you got to get rid of that system and say, hey, I need to get rid of this because I'm not getting any ideas. But, control, it's nasty. I can't stand control.
What's your favorite curse word?
Man, I don't have a curse, my favorite curse word. And this all sounds crazy, right? When I came to college, people laughed at me because I didn't curse. I didn't have my drink. This is my first drink I had that I intentionally drank, right? There's a story behind that. I didn't have it until I was 30. I didn't drink till I was 30, right? And I also went to college not cursing. Because I was just one of those straight-laced kids, didn't get into any trouble. Maybe I fought, I like girls, but, I always found curse words to be very reactive and not informative. Because I've also learned, you can cut somebody down with eloquent prose, and it goes a lot further. If you're really trying to be mean, throw some $10 words at them. Don't give them a cheap cuss word. If you really want to, I don't recommend disparaging anyone. I said earlier, I love Paris Hilton. I love her. She's a good person. But it's another thing to attack ideas with eloquence. Man, if you do that, man, that's when people can really get you. So they're all bad.
What is your favorite curse word?
Man, I would say I'll term this. I probably say. I'm trying to think between shit and damn. Somebody made me laugh. Shit. I'd probably say shit. Probably more.
What sound or noise do you love?
I love piano. Now I have an affinity for the sound of a cello because I played growing up as a child. I would never consider myself a cellist, right? But I spent enough time with it but I love a delicate piano. With the close second in terms of sound, I run every day, and so I love hearing breathing. Like I love that sort of the in and out breathing, and it's also one of the sexiest sounds when you hear people breathing. It's absolutely sexy. If you listen to the way people breathe, man, it's a gorgeous sound.
What sound or
They're like, hold up.
What sound or noise do you hate?
Oh man, ignorant speak. It's like, man, when people say some ignorant sort of, if we don't, absolutist kind of people. If we don't do it now, it'll never happen. Man, that's noise to me. It's like this alarmist. We got to do it now, or it'll never happen. This is or this is the best thing to have, or there's no hope. If you don't do this, there's no hope. That kind of alarmist stuff is noise because it's not real. It's not nuanced. It's not, it's just not real. So,
what profession other than your own would you like to attempt?
Man, attempt. Wow. I would like maybe staying in somewhere. I like poets. I like poetry. I'm just not a good poet, but if I could do poetry, I'd be okay.
What profession would you like not to do?
an accountant. I could never be an accountant, never. It's too controlling. It's too confined to an Excel sheet. I can't do it.
If heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
Oh, you've tried. You really, you did the best you could do. Because that's all, you can expect in life is somebody to say, man, you really tried. And you died doing it. Good job.
Questions for Dr. Perry? Yes, ma'am.
I've been reading over the months about the controversy about charter school systems, and people want to refine the public school system instead of starting a charter school system. What is the controversy exactly? Why are people upset about charter schools?
I think there are a couple points in the charter school debate that really upset people. One is the changing of human capital, because ultimately a lot of the charter school movement is built on this neoliberal market-driven response. And so whenever you have a market or corporate-like response, you create bottom lines, you create outcomes, and you create this framework. If you don't achieve these outcomes, then we can get rid of you. And so there's a real threat of getting rid of people that, after the storm, for instance, and it was somewhat controversial, a lot of 7,500, not somewhat, it was controversial, 7,500 people were fired. A lot of those folks were reabsorbed back in the system. And so that's why I think that's the most controversial piece. The other piece is who lays claim to change and reform. Everybody wants to be the savior of this. Everybody wants to say, we did it and you didn't. And it's an ego thing. All these movies, all this rhetoric, it goes back to this blaming and pointing. That is stupid, nonsensical, and unproductive. We definitely know that we have to change. We have to change. But it doesn't do anybody any good to say, well, you were the old school board and you were a failure. At least have some dignity about it. And so there's this meanness that doesn't help. It doesn't help being mean. And if we can get through that, then you can ultimately get to making structural changes that I think are important. And but it's just the firing people. We got to find ways to develop, to fire and develop people, because certainly we have good teachers that were made bad by a bad system. And so you got to find ways to differentiate that. But you also need to get rid of dead wood, so to speak. There are people who could care less that this is what they fell into, this is what they're doing, and we need. So if you give yourself the flexibility to do both, I think a lot of the animus will go away.
Next question. Yes, ma'am.
Very clear. I heard Department of Education, and is that here at UNO where?
Oh man, yep.
Oh, okay. So I was wondering, well, what would you suggest? Because my only experience with the Department of Education is my sister is currently trying to get her degree with a bachelor's degree, and I was wondering how would you suggest go about, I don't know, the whole UNO of course is feeling the financial, but how would would someone or people save a whole? Where is it? I guess I just know that.
Well, there's a building, there's a Bicentennial Education Center, right? Yeah. But I think there's a deeper question that I struggle with. It's colleges of education have to do a better job in explaining to the public of what they're doing. right? We have got to reach out to all of you and people, particularly those in the universities and also in colleges, and people in the community about what you're there for and how you can give people opportunities to contribute to that purpose and mission. So we've got to do a better job in that regard of communicating with the local public, meaning the colleges and the students within them, but also with the local community, because there's this town and gown problem, town meaning the local community, gown meaning people in the robes. There's a problem, there's a disconnect, and a lot of people still don't see me, they don't hear from me, they don't touch me, and I don't touch them, I don't talk to them. So I've got to do a better job of getting the word out about what we do. And so that question, is there a department, is there a college? I mean, that we've got to do a better job of addressing.
Next question. Yes, ma'am.
This morning there was a higher education rally in Baton Rouge for
Yep.
all the schools in the LSU system. What do you feel about that?
Oh, man. There is a crisis worldwide that is going on as we move from elite to mass, and what that means is before, in the 50s, I say the 50s, but certainly not, later than that. We had fewer people going to college, and it was less consequential on your life outcomes. You could work in a steel mill, drop out of 8th grade, and make a decent income. Now, if you don't go to college, it's almost impossible for you to live a decent life. It can be done. There's some people with $1 and a dream type of thing. But you at least got to get in the social environment. Graduate, but there's certainly you can even be exposed to the college environment and benefit, right? And so, unfortunately, when you have more people going in, a more diverse population going in, there's more resources needed, paired with the costs are going up. And so there's a crisis. Eventually, we have got to either say, we commit to going to a more mass-driven higher educational system, right? But this is where I am opposed. I don't believe in creating these boutique colleges and universities, getting smaller. Right? I don't believe in it to my core. Because I know that if you limit an education to community college being the opportunity for mass, there's a freezing out, so to speak. A lot of people never go on to transfer to 4 years. There's a wage gap between those who own an associate and those who own a bachelor's. I want to give people that opportunity, right? And so I don't believe in this boutique, let's trim, and limit it to certain people. That's just, I'm opposed. I certainly will work within the framework. I'm a member of the LSU system. I'm a tenured faculty member in this system. But at the same time, I'm going to always communicate if we don't give people a chance, particularly at UNO, the local communities, an opportunity to get a 4-year degree that's affordable, quality, and to give them the ability to do what they want to do. Man, you will hear that from me over and over again. I don't care who is the chancellor. I don't care who's the president. I don't care. That is the goal. And I think somewhere along the way, we've treated higher education like luxury. Oh, it's a luxury to go to college. They can pay for it if they want to get a degree. Try not getting a degree. See where you are in 5 years. See where you are in 10 years. It's almost become basic education the same way K-12 was a basic education 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 40 years. It's basic now. Because, all I know is the people who don't get degrees, who don't, they're more likely to interface with the criminal justice system. They're more likely not to have health care. They're more likely not to to have the choice of owning a home, right? These things I want. So don't ever let anybody tell you that we need accountability, blah, blah, blah. But my kid's going to go to the best educational system. My kid's going to be afforded every opportunity he or she has. It's hypocrisy, right? Now, I do think there are limits. We have budgetary needs, right? There are limits. However, this is essential. I'm still at the place. I mean, I'm biased. I teach this stuff. I believe in education is central. Like, you figure out a way to provide access and affordability. But if your mechanisms cut off access and affordability, it's not right. Get some economists, some higher educationists, some educators to fix it. Don't just across the board cut. That is so simplistic and weak. It's like, it's an easy thing to do. It's like no thought. There's no thought in that. So that's what I think about it. So protest, but protest wisely. That's why I say to folk, it does no good to punch the police, the public safety person. It's like, okay, that's not thinking either. It looks pathetic. The whole scene is bad. But protest wisely. Understand that when students connect with others, again, cross-pollinate with other universities, right? When students see that they are a political bloc, that their votes matter, their contributions matter, is when faculty and students say, look, okay, you're going to do this or you're not going to get elected. That's when we start to realize the power we have. Because, not to be too political about it, but we are an enormous political force that if you tap into, you can get what you want. Now, I would never want bad things, but I certainly don't want to limit access and affordability to the people who need it most.
Next question. Yes, ma'am.
This is sort of speaking to what you were just talking about. It seems that we have to change the state constitution because the cuts come to higher education and healthcare first above other things. And so how do we influence? It seems like we're not having any kind of influence over our politicians to
But I don't even think you have to change the Constitution for that. I think ultimately there is a process by which you can get rid of people who don't do the right thing, in my opinion.
Can I just ask one question? I've been curious about this. How many people know the state senator, like who their state senator is for them in their district? Where you live, you know the person's name who's your state senator in the class? One. Okay, how many people know the city council person for your area where you live, the district you live in? This district is your city council person. Okay.
Wow.
All right, anyway.
So, yeah, see, but that's the problem.
And I do write to them.
Right. See, and this is the problem. A lot of these things go down because there's just not voice and people are capitulating with whatever is laid down. It's not enough just to hold a protest sign. You got to vote. You got to contribute. You got to participate. Again, school is not, this is what makes me so mad. And I'm not mad at you because very few of you raised your hand. But the collective you, I am mad at because, school is not just about what goes on in this classroom, right? It is about how you live. We're not teaching you and providing you quality instruction, what I think is quality instruction, to just, get an A on a test. It's to actually impact your life, to impact other people's life. And in a democracy, if you don't know the political process, you don't touch, talk to, communicate with your elected officials, then what the heck are you doing? you guys are liberal arts majors. You're supposed to be the ideal communicators in terms of ethics, in terms of understanding the larger political situation, in terms of the sociological implications, the psychological. You guys are it, the historical ramifications. You're supposed to go up to, I'm trying to think of all the people, Juan LaFonta and Cedric Richmond and the folks who are connected in this area particularly, and say, look, well, what are you doing? How are you influencing this? I'm a student here. I also vote. And I want to see that situation change. But I guarantee you, the only time people communicate when is going to be a week before they cut. I'm going to write then it's too late. The deal is already done. The meetings leading up to that, the deals have been cut. You want to get to the meeting before the meeting, right? And so you got to influence the political process through participation and engagement.
Next question.
What process led you to want to be Associate Dean of College of Liberal Arts and CEO of Charter Schools?
Oh, there's an interesting story, and I have, there's an interesting story. So when I first arrived to New Orleans, I asked some folks to take me to the worst performing school and the best performing school in the city. I'll just save the story for the worst performing school. And I won't say the name of it because some of you may have gone there, but I went inside. At the time I had these long dreads. I don't know if anybody have seen me before. I had these long dreads, and so I walked in. They introduced me to the principal, and they said, "Oh, you're a young black man with dreads. They're going to connect with you," right? Right? Not necessarily the case, but walked in the class, and it was a classic. Excuse me. Walked in the class. You had the kids on the computer, gathered around the computer, teacher on the cell phone, right? Nothing going on, really. Introduced myself, said my name is Dr. Andre Perry. I started giving the accolades and credentials I had. I was fresh out of grad school, out of University of Maryland, College Park. I was hot stuff. I had this banging article on immigrant educational rights. You couldn't tell me anything, right? Went in there, sort of dressed like I am today, crossed my legs and all that other, acting all smart. And while in my introduction, this girl started laughing in the back. And, it got louder and louder. And she busted out and she said, "You ain't no doctor!" Right? And the entire class started rolling, including the teacher. It was a long laugh. The first 10 seconds it was cute. The first minute bruised my ego, right? I was like, hold up, I'm hot stuff. Folded my arms, got, like a salty preacher. And I said, if you can't see me as a doctor, you certainly can't see yourself, right? Fortunately, I had my regalia because I had to give a speech later on that day. I had my regalia, went to the car, came back out, put my robe on every child in that classroom. Told them how you get a doctorate. Told them the pain, sweat, and the importance of it. Talked about how the robe itself came out of medieval traditions in the monasteries of Europe. And from that day forth, I said, my goal is to give them the conception that they are smart. Just the idea that they can be a professor. Because it's not only the problem, and this is the problem in New Orleans, and I hope I'm clear about this. It's not only a problem that they don't see themselves as a professor, right? Or an intellectual. But it also means that everybody else around them does not. White, black. When they walk in the streets, again, the classroom is everywhere, right? When you're walking in the French Quarter on Bourbon, what are they going to assume you are if you're black, right? That's the problem. And I made it my business. If there's an opportunity to give kids the idea that they can be anything they want to be, and clearly I want them to be professors, right? I want them to live the life of the mind, to go out, think critically, to create, to build ideas. Because life, that's why I said, life is about creating new things. And so that's why I got involved in all this stuff, because, man, if you don't have the conceptualization that you're something higher than sitting in the classroom playing, on the computer some stupid game, then what are you doing?
Last question for Dr. Perry.
Last question. Make it good. No.
All right.
Standardized testing in schools. Is it a good thing or a bad thing?
It's how you use standardized tests. All right. Again, this is the theme of mine. Life can't be controlled in a box. It can't be confined in a bubble sheet. Right? Life is deeper than that. We definitely need a way to evaluate people, right? But it's just one way. Ultimately, I believe that there's a qualitative assessment and a quantitative assessment. Teachers should have a role in determining whether or not this kid is performing. And so I'm generally against how they're used. I'm a professor, I like tests. But I know that there are multiple ways to test, to evaluate, and I don't think we're using all those ways. I get one more, quickly.
I was wondering, how do you know that you're doing something right or good?
Yeah, that's right.
How do you know?
And that's why I said there's multiple ways. We certainly value tests, but that's the question. But I look at it this way. It's not only the micro level, right? It's also how you live. But see, this is where I'm a pure liberal arts person. I still believe that if you're getting a good education, you learn who your congressperson is. You communicate with them. You don't commit violence. You meet other people. You read good work. You have the capacity to do good things. I know when you're getting an education, a good education, when you're doing, and I don't mean to charge you, but again.
It's funny because I agree with all that. I guess I would rephrase it. I was wondering, how do you, what do you see that stands out that is obvious to you when you know, like, what makes it?
Well, let me, and this because of time. Language is so important to me. If you can put some good sentences back to back and convey an idea coherently, I know right off the top if you're generally thinking well, and I can generally get a sense if you're disciplined in your thinking that you can work within certain rules. But I also know language is important because there's times to break those rules, right? That's why, again, music, poetry, there's times when language has limits. And so, again, it's your ability to navigate language that tells me right off the top what kind of education you're getting.
Two things. We're getting to close to the close of the semester. And I have been reading your blogs on my website. And I want to remind y'all that, A, you're going to turn those in at the end of the semester. I'm going to grade them. And B, the whole world is reading them. So you cannot go back in and edit your blogs, only I can. But you can put some more thoughts on it. You're not limited to the amount of words that you have. So that'd be one thing. I would start going back and looking over your blogs, and if you need to add some stuff or whatever you need to do to, tighten it up, this would be a good time to go ahead on and do that. Second thing is, I'm inviting each of you to my first party at my house, my new house, and stand up, Kelly. This is my assistant, Kelly. If you would like to come, you give Kelly your name, your address, physical mailing address, your email, and your phone number. So we'll make sure you need to know you need an RSVP so I know exactly if you're coming alone, you're coming with somebody. But everybody's invited. It wouldn't hurt to come to your professor's house if you're invited to it.
But you know, not to bring it back to education, but faculty-student interaction is vitally important to success. So it's actually that social connection you make, you know, with your professor. So certainly, if there's libation involved, that's also good.
And Dr. Perry is going to be there taking a part of libation too, so
That's
y'all
right,
can come and address.
that's right.
And oh, we know that's a whole separate group of people. Yes, we need people to help, and those who help will be looked upon favorably, very
Right.
favorably. So it's next Tuesday at what time? 7 o'clock. The other thing is, Dr. Perry's Twitter address is up there, and you guys know mine. I haven't been seeing as many inspirational things on Twitter as I would like to see. So also, this is still a good time. It's not too late to get involved into the Twitter thing. The best Twitter and Facebook stuff I find, somebody's going to get an A before everybody else. So engage with that. Other than that, let's thank Dr. Perry, and I'll see y'all same time, same place next week.